Absheni bakokwane. Greetings this morning from Soni, Ntukulu wabangoni, Nivandao. Right now, I'm standing next to an ant hill. Ever wondered how such tiny creatures like ants could build such a huge mound, taller than a human being? My height is about 175 centimeters, so this is quite a tall mound. I can imagine how some of the birds singing around this area are probably thinking that ant hill was not built by ants, it was built by aliens. If you catch the joke. I can't help but think about the ancient Kemetic creation story that speaks of a tomb sitting on the primordial mound. So the creation story involves the primordial mound. You're probably wondering why I'm holding a book in the middle of a jungle. But I'm going to read out of this text, Conversations with Ogotomeli, an introduction to Dogon religious ideas by Marcel Grau. So the Dogon likened God Ama or Amen to a potter. And they explain how he took a lump of clay and molded it in his hand and formed Mother Earth. And so Mother Earth's body is explained as lying flat, face upwards in a line from north to south, is feminine. Its sexual organ is an ant hill, and its clitoris a termite hill. I mentioned the god Ama being likened to a potter. We see the same thing in ancient Kemet. You are looking at a bas relief from the temple in Dendera where god Khnum is fashioning man out of clay on a potter's wheel. Let's continue reading. In the ant hill, the male pneumo took place of the masculine element, which had been eliminated by the excision of the termite hill clitoris, while the female pneumo took place of the female element and her womb became part of the womb of the earth. It then talks about how the 8 beings that were created, which are the ancestors of the 8 ancestors of the Dogon people, returned to the primordial mound, which is the ant hill, to the Mother Earth to be reborn, return to the womb. Let's continue reading. What the 7th ancestor had received, therefore, was the perfect knowledge of a word, the second word to be heard on earth, clearer than the first, and not like the first, reserved for particular recipients, but destined for all mankind. It was not directly to men, but to the ant, avatar of the earth, and native to the locality, that the 7th ancestor imparted instruction. So according to Dogon mythology, the ant is the grand recipient of wisdom. This is why Bible writers in the book of Proverbs speak to the lazy person, the sluggard, and say, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, because the ant is the receiver, the grand receiver of wisdom, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. Clearly, all animals gather their own food and they have no overseer and stuff like that. The question is, why the ant? And my submission to you is that the ant is the grand recipient of primordial wisdom. From this primordial wisdom, we have great architectural structures, the greatest architectural structures humankind has ever created, like this pyramid of ancient Nubia. And from this primordial wisdom and knowledge, we get the concept of holy mountains, the holy mound, because they are a resemblance of the primordial mound spoken of in the ancient Kemet creation story spoken of in the ancient Dogon creation story. From this primordial wisdom, we also have the great architectural structures such as the conical tower of Great Zimbabwe and the great obelisks or tekenus of ancient Kemet and ancient Ethiopia. What you are looking at here is the ancient temple of Luxor. And on the left here, you've got the obelisk, the tekenu, the one circled, original tekenu. And on the right, you have a mosque that's built within the ancient temple. And look at what they've copied. And the same design you'll see in churches, in mosques. You see the two obelisks left and right. But the original is here in Kemet, where the temples had an obelisk on the left and on the right at the entrance. And then, as I said earlier in the video, the mound represents black divine masculinity. All right, in conclusion, in the beginning, we spoke about the ancient Dogon cosmology, where Mother Earth is represented in both the masculine and the feminine in the ant hill and the termite hill. And the 8 ancestors of the Dogon returning to their birthplace, which is Mother Earth in the ant hill, to be born again, to be rebirthed. And the same resurrection story is told in ancient Kemet through the story of Asa, who was slain by his brother Set, who is then brought back to life by his virgin wife Aset, who arouses his spirit back to life. And in this bas relief, we see him rising from the horizontal, representing death, rising to the perpendicular is at 45-degree angle. And you can see his penis rising to the 90-degree angle. There's a lot of mathematics there. And all of that represents resurrection. And the beetle that you see at the top represents Khepera, who represents transformation, as he rolls the sun to the next world. So it is night where I am right now, which means Khepera has rolled the sun to the other side of the world. It speaks of newness of life. So behind every pyramid, every tekenu, every holy mountain in the world, behind that lies the baNTU philosophy, the Memphite theology of ancient Kemet, the creation story of the Dogon people. And as per the words of Ogotumeli, the perfect knowledge of a word, the second word to be heard on earth, clearer than the first and not like the first, reserved for particular recipients but destined for all mankind. So this knowledge was imparted on our ancient African ancestors who went about the entire globe teaching the nations. So it is not aliens that built the pyramids around the world. It is our ancestors who received the wisdom from the ant, the avatar of the earth. So to speak of newness or rebirth, we must first go and look at the birth, the beginning, the genesis. So we cannot have an African rebirth unless we go back to the beginning, the birth of our cosmology, the birth of our spiritual systems, because we are spiritual beings and we need a spiritual resurrection. And for that to happen, we need to restore African divinity by going back to the primordial mound at the beginning and restore black masculinity, African masculinity, African femininity, and only then can we restore African divinity. Because divinity in the African construct is the unison and the joining of the masculine and the feminine. Hence, in the Dogon story, Mother Earth has both elements of the masculine and the feminine. Africa has had so many revolts, but we are yet to have a revolution. And a revolution means a spiritual restoration, cultural restoration. From me, Musoni, Mtukulu Wabangoni ni Vandao. Pere.